Hey up, welcome to more AI building insights from God's own country of Yorkshire. Now, they say content is king. Well, aye, that's as maybe, but it don't half take up a load of time, and paying someone to do it can cost a lot of money. Being a Yorkshireman, I obviously decided to keep the padlock on my wallet and build an automated AI content manager that'll keep creating fresh and relevant news content about the AI industry all day long, and it costs as close to now as possible. I'm also allergic to bad news, so I only want good news, and I want to have an opportunity to approve a story before it gets written. Bloomin' magic, eh? Right, let's get a wriggle on and dive in. Here's the tech stack that I use to create my robot content manager. For the back end, I'm using make.com, which is a visual workflow building platform that makes it dead easy to develop clever AI and automation apps. Alongside that, I've got a number of other services, most of which are free, because like I said, I'm tighter than a robot duck's exhaust pipe. I'll be using Google Sheets as a database, and I'll be pulling curated stories in through an RSS feed. I've got this clever little web scraping app running through Rapid API, and of course I'll be passing my data to OpenAI's API to do all sorts of jobs. Then I'm going to have it automatically create a blog article and publish it on my WordPress site along with all the metadata, and then pump out tweets and a LinkedIn post with a link to the blog. And all this is stuff I used to do manual in the past, and it isn't half a lot of work. So having a bot to do it for me, well, that's just saved me a load of time and energy. Flippin' marvellous. Let's get into it. So here we are in make.com. I have a number of different steps to my app. You can do it all in one single scenario, but I personally prefer to do it in a number of different ones. It does make bug fixing and debugging just that little bit easier, I find. So step one, we're going to get news stories from an RSS feed, and the feed is here. You can see I've set that up from RSS.app. So that pulls it straight into here, and it's pulling stories which have been published in the last 4 hours up until right now, and return a maximum of 10 stories. It will now store these into a Google Sheet, which is here. At the moment, this is empty, but you'll see that populate very shortly. And then what it's going to do is aggregate all of those, and then finally it's going to send a HTTP request to the second step in my content manager app. So let's run that first of all. So you can see that I have an empty database here. I'm just going to click the run once button and just let it do its thing. It's pulling some stories, it's aggregating them, and now it's sent a message to the sentiment classifier. So it should have got 5 stories. Let's have a look. Yes, there we go. It has done that. 2, 3, 4, 5. Great. Okay, so you can actually now see that the sentiment part is populating as time goes on. And that's because the second part has already started. We sent it for sentiment classification here. And that's effectively kicked off step 2, which is to classify the stories for sentiment and send them for approval. Now, this is how it works. This webhook here is listening for when step 1 is complete. Then what it does is it opens up the Google Sheet and it looks for those lines which have a sentiment analysis done set as no, but where the title exists already, and it's going to return up to 10 rows. For that, it's then going to pass them through an iterator, and then it's going to send those stories to OpenAI, which is got the single job of determining whether from the title alone it believes this news story is positive, negative, neutral, or maybe even a promotion. We obviously don't want neutral or promotions. We just want positive news stories, or maybe at a push negative ones as well. So then what that does is updates the Google Sheet with the actual sentiment that it gets back from OpenAI. Very, very simple. Now, if it determines something is negative or a promotion, what it does is it simply also flags them for deletion as well, which is one of the columns in my sheet. So let's see how the sheet's done so far. So all of these have now been sentiment classified. As we see, we've got a couple of neutrals, a couple of positives, and a negative. Okay, so next thing that we're going to do is step 3 is going to come into play. Now, step 3 is very simple. I wanted a little bit of manual intervention. I wanted to approve a particular story to be rewritten or not. So what this is going to do is send a message to my Slack, and as you can see here, it will open up the Google Sheet, and what it's going to do is ask for those which have the sentiment analysis which has been done, but where a Slack message does not exist and it is not marked for deletion. It's going to send those through an iterator, and then a router is going to decide which of these paths it's going to follow. If it's a positive or a neutral story, it's going to send a message to my Slack. Now, I've actually used blocks. This is the Slack blocks to create the content, and this is going to be markdown content. It's got the text, please approve this story, and then it's got some of the elements from the story. So it's got the original title, which is now pulled from our database, the original URL, so I can click on it and read it if I want to do, and then it has a couple of buttons. The first one is the approve button with the value of approved, and the second one is a don't approve button with the value not approved, and I'm going to get to click those in my Slack, and depending on what I click in the next part will depend on whether it gets rewritten or not. So once it's created the message, obviously it is then going to save the timestamp of the message to the database in that row. Should it be negative or a promotion, it just very simply sets it as mark for deletion, which means that at the end of the day that row will get deleted and nothing else will happen. So that's step 3. So what will happen is now it should send these stories to my Slack channel here. So we're actually going to run that section now. So we've got our stories in here which have had the sentiment analysis done, but they've not been passed for approval yet. So let's run this and just watch what happens. So it's picking up from the Google Sheet. And as you can see, Slack is now telling me, it's going crazy, telling me that it's got stories in there that require approval. So let's have a look at Slack. Here we are. Here are our new messages. So we've got this one on the financial industry's top trends for 2024. Yeah, that could be okay, maybe. Let's approve that. And this one here, unleashing the power of artificial intelligence for business intelligence advancements. Now, it looks boring. Let's not approve that. The evolution of technology plays into the latest Oxford English Dictionary update. Like that, we'll approve that one. And then finally, NVIDIA pushes the bounds of AI by improving generative AI capabilities with these really, really clever graphics cards. Like it, we'll approve that one as well. So let's now have a look at our feed. And as you can see, it's created the Slack messages for the ones that we have decided to approve. And you can see there's 3 that we approved and 1 that we didn't. Okay, so that's that step completely done. Now, step 4 then runs, step 4 is listing for approval. That's the bit where I was pressing the approve or don't approve button in my Slack. Let's have a look at what step 5 does. It's going to grab the news text. So what's going to happen here is we're going to open up our Google Sheet and we're going to look for those stories which have been approved via Slack, but where the original text does not exist. As you can see here, we have no original text in these parts, but they have been approved. Now, what's going to happen is it's going to pass it to an API on Rapid API. It's the readability one by Slav123. I just think this is really good. It pulls off the data that I want. And it's going to then send that through a text parser, and it's going to send that text to OpenAI. And what OpenAI is going to do is determine whether the input text appears to have the structure of a news article or a blog article. Now, if it does have the structure of a news article, it's going to send back the word approved. Otherwise, it's going to return the single word rejected. Now, the reason for doing this is that sometimes the information that gets passed doesn't contain the article text, or something goes wrong, or it's blocked by robots, or there's some other weird text that goes in there. And in this case, I just want to mark it effectively for deletion and reject doing that article. It just makes things so much easier. So then it goes from there to a router. If it's been approved by this step here, then it will go into our Google Sheet simply with the word validation approved. And if not, it's going to go into our Google Sheet with rejected. So that's going to help us on our next step. So let's run that step and see what happens. As we can see here, there's nothing in the original text at this point in time. So we're going to run that once, and it's going to send it to the Rapid API. It's going to classify it using OpenAI, and eventually, once this is done, what we're going to get is this original text is either going to appear because it's pulled it, or we're going to get a validation of approved or rejected here. So let's see how far along that is. Okay, it's still doing its thing. I'll come back to that in just a moment. We've had our analysis done on rows 4, 6, and 7 here, and what we'll notice is that on row 4 it's been rejected, on row 6 it's been approved, and row 7 it's been rejected. So row 6 now is the only one that's going to be written in the next step, which is here. So it's going to open up the Google Sheet again, and this time it's going to pull those where the original text exists, but the new title does not exist, and the validation has been approved. One by one, they will be sent iteratively through to OpenAI again, and it's going to rewrite the text. There's quite an extensive prompt here, which is probably best to be seen on this one, which is the news content rewriter. As we can see here, we're rewriting the news content, and we're going to output with a title. We're going to have it structured in this manner. We're going to have a 700-word limit. There's a few other things there. But then what's interesting here is these additional bits of information that we're going to ask for. So we're going to ask for a concise tweet, which is going to be wrapped in tweet/endtweet, these special tags here. And then we're going to create a DALL-E prompt as well, wrapped in the image prompt tags. And after this, we're going to create a primary keyword, and we're going to wrap that in the primary keyword tags. Next, we're going to do some slightly different text for LinkedIn, and we're going to wrap it in LinkedIn tags. And then finally, we're going to do the same with a meta description and wrap it in the description tags. So what that's going to return to us is then going to be parsed, and we're going to pull out some of that information. We're going to match various different patterns. In this case, we're going to match the title, and we're going to pull that out. We're going to store it as a variable shortly. We're going to parse the tweet text and pull that out. We're going to parse the image prompt, and the same for the LinkedIn text, and the same for the primary keyword, and again the same finally for the description. And then we're going to save all of those as variables, which we can use in a moment. Then we're going to create a Google Doc, which is going to be stored on our Google Drive. And then finally, we're going to update the relevant row in our Google Sheet with the article title, the tweet text, the prompt text, the document ID, the primary keyword, meta description, excerpt text, and the LinkedIn text. They're all going to be saved in our database table for later. So that's our whole flow. So let's run this step now. As we can see in our database, we've got this information here. We've got only one that's been approved, so we're going to wait for that one to be sent through. Let's run it and watch it happen. So it's passing, it's looking in the Google Sheet, searching for the rows, going a little bit slowly at the moment, and it's passed one iteration into OpenAI, which is now rewriting the text and setting all of those prompts, the image prompts and the LinkedIn text and the meta descriptions, and all of the rest of it. So when that comes back, we're going to be doing all this parsing. There we go. It's parsed all the text. It's set the variables, and now it's creating a Google Doc and storing that onto our Google Drive. And the new doc, let's just see that created. It's here. And here is the format that our Google Doc has taken. As you can see, we've got what we wanted. It's a nice length. It's been reasonably well formatted, and it's got our titles and all the rest of it in here. And it's updated our Google Sheet with all of these new variables. So the title, the tweet text, the prompt, the ID. The new featured image hasn't yet been created. We've got meta primary keyword, meta description, excerpt, and so on and so forth, and even a LinkedIn text there as well. So that's the rewriting part, which has now been done. So let's move on to the next section. And in the next section, we're generating an image for the article. Now remember that in the last section we created an image prompt. So once again, we're going to open up our Google Sheet, and this time we are going to get those articles where image prompt text exists, but the featured image has not yet been created. It's been validated. The Google Doc exists, but the WordPress blog hasn't been created. Easy as pie. We're going to only send 5 of these through. It's going to iterate through. It's going to go to OpenAI again, and this time we're going to use the DALL-E 3 model. We're going to send the image prompt text in. We're going to set it to be a landscape image at quality standard, and then once that comes back, we're going to save that image link, which it spits out, into a new line here. Then we're going to use a HTTP request to get that data, and we're going to upload that into our Google Drive, and we're going to get the output of the get a file module. We're then going to save the location of that file into our Google Sheet, and that will be step 7. So let's run it. We know that there's one in there waiting to get its image created, so it's just looking. It's now passing it through into DALL-E. As you can see in here, we haven't yet created the image for it, but in a moment they're just going to pop up in here and here with the Drive image ID and the image link. There we go. There's the image link. It's now getting the actual image, and it's going to save it onto Google Drive. It's done that, as we can see, and there is the image ID, and we'd be able to go and look at that now in our posts. I've had them saved in here, so it's this one here. This is the image that we're going to be using. As you can see, oh, that's an interesting image. But it'll do. It's what we want for now. Obviously, we can add more functionality into it later on if we wanted to edit a few things. Finally, we are going to go on to creating the blog and the social post. So we've got everything that we need now. We've got article text in our Google Doc. We've got a DALL-E image. We've got LinkedIn and tweet texts and metadata and all the rest of it. So in step 8, we are going to open up our sheet again. This time we are going to search rows where the Google Doc exists, the Drive image exists, there is a new featured image created, and the WordPress blog hasn't yet been created or published. Obviously, we only want approved ones. And we are going to send those iteratively through. We're going to get our Google Doc, first of all, and obviously we're going to get the doc by the mapping which comes from the Google Doc ID in our sheet. We're going to now create a WordPress post, and this is where some of the variables that we stored before are really useful. We're going to pass in the new title. We're going to pass in the text content which comes from the Google Doc, the excerpt which is stored in our sheet, the date of publication is going to be right now. We're going to pass the slug in as the WordPress blog post ID, which is going to be saved in here. We are going to set it to AI News as a category. We're not going to set any tags at this point. We're going to close comments and pings, and we're going to also set some other metadata as well. In this case, SEO description, which is coming from our Google Sheet, I use rank math for SEO, so we're going to set a rank math focus keyword. That's going to become from our primary keyword. And then we have some closing info that's going to be added to the end of it, and that's going to be the publishing date and a little bit of free text there. That's going to be sent. Then what we're going to do, that's going to create the post. Then we're going to download the image file that we created before, and then we are going to pass this to WordPress. So that's going to upload that image file into WordPress's media. It's going to give it a title, an alternative text, which is the same as the title, and it's going to assign that as the featured image for the new post that we've created. Finally, we're going to get the WordPress post. And the reason we're going to get that is that we now want to store that post ID in our Google Sheet. And as you can see, we're going to append its link here as the generated slug. So what we'll see is generated slug comes from this here, and we're going to create both a slug, a media item, and a full URL, which we're going to use later on. So then I'm setting an increment because I don't want them to be published all exactly the same time. So this is going to increment 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as we go. We're going to store the increment as a variable, and we're going to store each increment as a 20-minute time delay. Okay, you'll see how that works in just a moment. And then we're going to set another variable. We're going to set the blog URL, which is again going to be my website's URL and the generated slug, which we got before. We're then going to send some information to Buffer. So we're going to send the tweet text first of all, and we're going to send the blog URL as well. And we're going to post the update in a few minutes' time. Now, remember, we did this incrementation as a variable here. We set it to a 20-minute incrementation. So 1 by 20 would be the first one, and then it would be 2 by 20, then 3 by 20, and so on. So we're going to spread our tweets out at every 20-minute increments. And we're going to do the same again with LinkedIn, this time using the LinkedIn text, and we're going to set that by the same increment, and that's going to schedule it in our buffer drive. Then finally we're going to update that in our Google Sheet. So we're going to mark it for deletion because we've done the jobs that we wanted to do. We've published a LinkedIn post, we've published a tweet. We know they're going to go to Buffer now. So let's run that step and see what happens. So it's creating it. It's now creating the post. It's done the first post. It's downloading the file. It's creating the media. That's uploading the image. It's getting the post. It's saving it. And now it's going to save our information into our buffer. And what we'll see is we have our new post that's going to be set here. We have the story, and we have the link to it, which has been Buffer has very kindly minimized it for us, and there is the link to our story. So we'll just discard those changes. Let's have a look at that's the LinkedIn one, and once again the same. If we have a look at that, we will be able to see that that is done. So in a few minutes' time, those tweets are going to be published. Let's just have a look right now. In fact, let's share it now on Twitter, and let's share it now on LinkedIn. Share now. So let's just, first of all, it's the Oxford English Dictionary. As we can see, we now have this story there, and if we were to click on that link, it's going to take us to our blog post. So here we are on the website, and as you can see, the post has been complete. There's the featured image, the title, it's got the meta there. We've now got the story, we've got headings, we've got the content of the story, and that's it. Let's also have a look at LinkedIn, and yes, we can see it's been published on here as well. So if we click on the link, as we can see, that then takes us to the article once again. So there you go. We have created a complete content manager which operates pretty much without any human intervention, except for me wanting to approve whether I think something should be included or not. All of this is automated and it's basically completely free. Now, bear in mind that, some companies pay upwards of £30,000-40,000 a year to have somebody doing a job like this. I'm not saying that this is the be-all and end-all of content management. Of course it isn't. This is just one possible scenario that you could use to create news stories regularly and keep regular content going on your site without having to do it yourself. So that's it for now. Hope you've enjoyed this content. If you have liked it, please do consider giving it a like. Subscribe to the channel, drop a comment, all the good stuff that helps YouTube channels to grow. And that's it for now. Hope that's been useful, and ta-ra for now.